Mr. Steele's talking about a recorded statement that transpired on January 22nd, 2023. He's trying to impeach him or refresh his memory. And if he lies or if it's not consistent with whatever that recording says, then he's going to impeach him. And then now you got Adrian Love objecting. Objection, Your Honor, facts not in evidence. Objection, Your Honor, there's no foundation for this. Objection, Your Honor. Objection, Your Honor. Objection, Your Honor.
Call your first witness. I got Kenneth Willis. He about his business, he gon' take it the distance. Listen, he giving gaming, believing high level represent. Call your first witness. Yeah, call your first witness.
Griff has been paid for this endorsement.
Where you at? Where you at? Where you at? Beautiful people. How you doing? How you living? Welcome to another episode of Call Your First Witness. It's your boy, K. Will. Thank you for tuning in to another episode. I really appreciate it. Appreciate the love. Appreciate the support. I see you. I see all the downloads on my podcast. I see all the views on YouTube, man. I'm elated by the support. You know, if all I got was one view, if all I got was one download, your boy would still be coming back. But I need to tell y'all, listen, the support, the love is overwhelming, and I appreciate it, and it's giving me that little extra push to keep going. So just want to thank y'all for that. But listen, I'm circling back. I told y'all I didn't forget about the Young Thug case. You know, for a little while, I spent some time on Fani Willis and the Trump election interference case. But I said I'm coming back to that Young Thug case, right? I'm not even leaving the city. We gonna stay right in Fulton County. We ain't going nowhere. And so, yeah, I wanna jump right back into it. I saw one of the comments on YouTube. Somebody asked me, they wanted me to break down Adrian Bean's testimony. I saw you. Listen, I'll be looking at the comments, good, bad, or ugly. Listen, but I appreciate that, and here I am. We're going to break down Adrian Bean's testimony. Those of you who do not know, the trial left off, I think they were at day 41. The person who's still on the stand is Adrian Bean. Adrian Bean is on the hot seat, and let me tell you something. I don't think it's any fun for him. Right? I mean, he's there. He's under subpoena. He knows he has to be there. But I think that's the last place in the world he would want to be. And the reason why I'm saying this is on so many levels, man. Most people don't want to end up in court, period. Like, they just don't want to be bothered. Don't put me on the stand. Don't scrutinize what I got to say. Don't put me on Front Street. I don't want to be involved. A lot of folks don't really want to be involved, let alone a case that just so happened to be a highly televised, highly watched case. Ain't nobody interested in that, right? Honestly, I feel bad for people like Adrian Bean, right? Because Adrian, you got to understand, Adrian Bean, he never was a defendant in this case. He was convicted as a result of his involvement with some of the allegations that's on the indictment many years ago. The incident he's on the stand for now, it dates way back to 2013, right? And so he's, as a result of that particular incident, he has pled guilty, got a plea deal to that charge and another charge, did his time, paid his debt to society, moved on with his life. He's working, doing well. He was on drugs back then. He's sober. I think he said he's like 4 years sober, right? Living a good life. All that stuff is in his past. And, you know, I feel bad for him. It's not like Trontavious Stevens, right? Trontavious Stevens, he initially started as a part of the case, right? And so now, you know, he got his plea deal. And so now he's still caught up in it. But you got people like Adrian Bean that did his time. And he's making it clear, I'm done with that. And for the most part, his entire testimony, pretty much 95% of his testimony is like, look, I don't recall. Adrian Love, you got all these questions for me. I don't recall. Brian Steele, you got all these questions for me. I don't recall. And the essence of why he's saying he don't recall is he's saying, listen, that happened a long time ago. That's something I'm not proud of. I moved forward with my life. And whatever happened before I went to jail, before I went to prison and did my time, I'm done with that. It's over with. Now, reasonable minds can infer that he did not forget the incident in question that happened on September 11, 2013, right? Like, that's that incident in which he was hit by a police unit, allegedly was involved in attempted armed robbery, pled guilty to aggravated assault on a police officer, 3 counts, right? Again, got hit by a police unit right outside of a laundromat, not too far from Cleveland Avenue where he lived. So, reasonable minds can infer that that incident is probably stenciled in his memory. I mean, I just would think that, right? Some of it, maybe not the specific details, but some of it. But he's saying, look, it happened in 2013. There's some legitimacy to that. It happened a long time ago. I'm done with that, right? I moved on with my life. I'm doing well. All bad things are put behind, at least as it relates to those incidents and maybe some other criminal activity that occurred maybe before, maybe after, around that time period. But Adrian Love called him as a witness, and she's like, it's time to recall this particular incident. And if you remember, Adrian Love, and I addressed this in my first episode, Adrian Love, during her opening statement, she said, listen, now some people that we call to the stand may get on the stand and simply say they do not recall what they're testifying to. They don't recall these incidents. And she kind of alluded to, it's up to you all, jury, to discern whether or not they telling the truth. But she kind of threw it out there. She was pretty much planting the seed that just anticipate some witnesses getting on this stand and, let's face it, get a little amnesia, right? And so she's setting it up because she know most of the time, if you're a prosecutor, if you're a defense lawyer, you want to know what that witness is going to get on the stand and say. I mean, ideally, you want to know what they're going to say. Now, it don't happen like that all the time. You don't know what's going to happen when that thing live, right? That witness stand to do something to people, right? But you have an idea. So she's calling witnesses to the stand, in this particular case, Mr. Bean, knowing that he's probably not going to recall everything, or he's going to say he doesn't recall everything. But she still needs to get him on the stand to try to refresh his memory or impeach him. And when we talk about impeach, essentially what we mean is she going to question him about a specific incident. If he doesn't recall and maybe he gave a prior statement, she'll try to refresh his memory. If that statement is something he said in the past and now he's saying he never said it, she can bring up that prior statement, right, and impeach him. Now, you got contradicting statements. You on the stand saying you didn't say it, but you on record saying something else. And so Adrian is questioning him about an incident that occurred on 9/11/2013. This involves, allegedly, depending on who you believe or what you believe, 3 or 4 individuals in a vehicle. Supposedly, Mr. Bean was the driver. He has a guy by the name of Walter Murphy in the vehicle, a guy by the name of Frederick Prathro in the vehicle, and according to Adrian Love, Young Thug, Jeffrey Williams, was also in that vehicle, right? And Adrian Love is relying on Mr. Bean's prior statements to substantiate that Young Thug was in that vehicle, right? Now, what's important about this vehicle is this vehicle was allegedly involved in an attempted robbery of a gentleman by the name of Derek Dotson. And I believe he's no longer with us. May he rest in peace. And he didn't die as a result of this particular incident where he is listed as a victim in an attempted armed robbery. This particular incident, Adrian Bean eventually pled guilty to. He pled guilty to 3 counts of aggravated assault on a peace officer. He also was charged with armed robbery. They dismissed the armed robbery. He got 10 years in prison. They suspended 7 years. All he had to do was 3 years, right? I think he pled guilty sometime around 2015. Again, the incident happened in the year of 2013. He got out sometime around 2017, all right? But allegedly, he was the driver. Now, Adrian Love wants to recall Mr. Bean's statements because according to Adrian Love, Mr. Bean implicated Young Thug by saying Young Thug was also in that vehicle. Now, why is that important? Young Thug never was arrested or charged as a result of this incident, right? Never charged for aggravated assault on a peace officer, never charged for armed robbery or attempted armed robbery, never charged. And Brian Steele definitely is making that clear, right? But the reason why this is so important now, over 10 years later, is because this is part of the conspiracy. This is part of the YSL street game. This is part of the enterprise, right? So now, again, remember my first episode, I'm talking about Adrian Love wants to bring Young Thug all in it, all in this mess. Brian Steele, Young Thug's lawyer, is trying to distance him from the mess, right? And so now Adrian Love is like, yeah, look at our celebrated recording artists, making hits, traveling the world, pursuing Grammys. Look at him. In the midst, in 2013, in the vehicle, involved in an attempted robbery, aggravated assault on peace officers. He's in the car. He's in the car, right? And not only is she saying that, she is questioning Mr. Bean specifically about, listen, you don't remember telling the police officer that you and Young Thug ran away? And you wish you ran in the same direction of Young Thug because Young Thug got away? Yes. And Young Thug was the one that wanted to hit a lick. And Young Thug said, man, Dotson got about $23,000 to $33,000 on him. And they all everybody was trying to get some lean, some codeine, right? And the plan was to go and rob Derek Dotson. That's what Adrian Love is trying to remind Mr. Bean. Mr. Bean, you remember telling the police officer this? You don't remember Detective Quinn questioning you about this particular incident and you giving us specific details as to what Young Thug did and Young Thug said? You don't remember? And Mr. Bean is saying, ma'am, I do not remember. I do not recall. I'm putting all this behind me. I had a drug problem back then. I'm doing much better. It's over and done with. Leave me alone. You keep asking me the same question. I'm going to tell you the same answer. I do not recall. And that's pretty much going on the whole time. But see, this is what makes it interesting for me in my perspective. Right, my defense lawyer hat. I can't help it, y'all. I told y'all I'm coming from a defense mind, a defense perspective. I'm gonna give you both sides, but at the end of the day, I'm looking at it initially through the lens of a defense lawyer. I can't help it. And so, what I'm asking Miss Love, in my mind, I'm saying, Miss Love, I hear what you're saying, and I hear you refer to this dialogue between Detective Quinn for the Atlanta Police Department and Adrian Bean, and you're referencing this interview that happened shortly after Mr. Bean was arrested as a result of the September 11, 2013 incident. But you're not pulling up any audio, any visual recordings of this particular interview. You are simply asking him about it. Do you remember when a detective asked you about this statement? Do you remember telling the detective you were with Young Thug? You remember telling the detective 2 other people were in the car? It was the 4 of y'all? You remember telling detective it was Young Thug's idea to rob them because they had about 20 to 30K in their pocket? Dotson had about 20 to 30K in his pocket? But you're not referencing any recorded statement. So how do we know this transpired? where are you getting this information from? See, what Adrian Love is doing is she's asking Bean this question, throwing it out there, getting the jury to hear it. And so naturally you have the jury saying, why is Adrian Love asking him these questions? She's very specific. And she wants them to think that, man, if she's asking this question, maybe it happened. Maybe this is how the interview went. Not necessarily the case because you don't have anything to verify this interview. So you're asking us statements. Mr. Bean is saying, I do not recall. I do not recall. My thing is, can we reference an audio recording at the very least as to this conversation? Because I want to know everything surrounding this conversation. When did he give it? What time did he give it? How long the conversation was? Under what circumstances he gave the conversation? Was he promised a deal? Was he consistent in his story? Did he say it multiple times or did he give different statements? That's why the recording is so important. What you mean you don't have a recording? Adrian Love, if you saying this happened, do you have any proof? Because a lot of times, and I find this a lot in my experience as a trial lawyer, listen, just because the police officer said it went down this way and this was the nature of the conversation doesn't make it true, right? I come out the gate when I'm picking a jury, I'm asking jurors, listen, just because officers have on a shiny badge and a starched uniform, does that mean they necessarily telling the truth? Are we going to give credence to officers just because they take the stand? And I got to ask this question, and I know what most people may say, officers are human beings just like everybody else. But there are some people who believe just because the officers say it, it's gospel. And so I'm asking that question because I want them to remember at some point during the trial, listen, we need to test the veracity of what these officers are saying, because officers also have an objective to sort of twist the facts. And if I could sort of twist this fact and fabricate this and add this, kind of stretch it a little bit to augment my entire case, then I got to do just what I got to do, because at the end of the day, I do believe he's guilty. I don't feel bad about stretching the facts because at the end of the day, I know he's guilty. I got the facts to back it up. No, you don't know that. You weren't there. You believe he's guilty. You may have prejudged him. You got this belief, but we're glad everything don't come down to your belief. It's up to the jury. And so what I want the jury to understand, every time we talking about when an officer is giving a statement and saying the defendant said this or the suspect said that, I need verification. I need proof. Did you have your body camera on? Did you record this statement? What condition y'all was? Was it audio? Was it visual? I need to know, because if you're going to get on the stand and just say, this is what he told me, or if the state is just going to ask questions, isn't it true that police officer said this and you told the police officer that? That ain't proving anything. You just throwing words on the wall and trying to see what's going to stick. So I'm trying to figure out, okay, Adrian Love, you got pointed questions that you're asking Mr. Bean, but was this conversation recorded? Because who else is going to get up on the stand and establish that? You're going to get a police officer on the stand and say, this is what Bean told me? I don't think so. That's hearsay, right? It'll be different if the police officer got on the stand and said, this is what Jeffrey Williams said, because he's a defendant, right? And so there's exceptions when a defendant is on trial and police officers get on the stand and testify to what the defendant said. But you're talking about somebody who's not a defendant. So officer can't get on the stand and say, this is what Mr. Bean told me. No, that's hearsay every day of the week, twice on Sunday. Right? And so what we're talking about, but what makes it even more interesting is Brian Steele is like, listen, she didn't muddy the water, and Adrian Love is asking all these specific questions and she's throwing it out there. Isn't it true that there's a recorded statement while you in jail and you talking to your wife about Young Thug's involvement? She's throwing it out there. And when you can't unring the bell, it's there and the jury's hearing it. Why is Adrian Love? Somebody's got to think, why does she keep asking these questions? And if you got somebody on the witness stand that's saying, I don't remember, and they don't remember specific details about what one would think to be a traumatic event, being hit by a vehicle, and then pleading guilty to all these charges, one may also think, man, this person remember this. No, ain't no way in the world. This person lying, gonna get on the stand and act like they don't remember this incident. Yeah, it happened 10 years ago, but you know, you remember. You trying to save face because all eyes on you, right? All eyes on me. Rest in peace, Tupac. You sitting on that stand and you got all the defendants. You got 6 defendants looking at you, right? You got a jury, nationally televised trial, big case, all eyes on you. And when you done with this, you got to go back home. So I don't remember may mean I just don't want what? We know the word snitch. I don't want to be viewed as a snitch. And so, like I said, Adrian Love set it up. We don't know. They going to get on this stand and they going to say they don't remember. But Brian still has to deal with all the innuendo and the suggestions and the implications and the speculation that this conversation between Detective Quinn and Mr. Bean actually happened, and Mr. Bean really implicated his client. Right? So I don't know is not enough because we can't unring this bell, and he's smart enough to know if Adrian Love is asking him those specific questions, then some jury members might think this must be true. So Brian Steele, man, this guy is doing his thing. He is, in my opinion, he's using this one witness and he's knocking not 2 birds with one rock, but he's knocking out a whole flock of birds with one rock. Because when Brian Steele gets on that podium to cross-examine Mr. Bean, Brian Steele is like, let's break all these convictions down. Let's talk about what you pled guilty to. We're going to talk about you pleading guilty to 3 counts of aggravated assault on a peace officer. And they dismissed the home robbery. Yeah, how that happened? A whole police chase. You put all kind of people in danger trying to get away from this incident. And you pled guilty to it. And man, all you had to do was 3 years. So one still is mentioning that you a convicted felon. And let me tell you something. The law generally says just on the fact that somebody's a convicted felon, you could discredit their testimony just on that alone. And so Brian Steele was not only talking about those convictions, but he's bringing up another incident in which he pled guilty to, and they ran all the charges together. So essentially what he's saying, and you're going to hear this in closing argument, I could put money on it. He's going to go and say, man, can we believe this convicted felon? We don't know what's what. He's saying one thing to this officer. He's saying another thing to me, and I'm gonna bring that up in a second. But let's just start with the fact that he's a convicted felon. Let's start with that alone, and the judge will read you an instruction. I think I'm not 100% sure about Georgia law, but generally what I know about trials, if you got a conviction, your credibility is automatically put into question. And so he's addressing that, but then he's also addressing, wait. Let's talk about the time you got. You were involved in this incident, right? Shooting at peace officers. And he's making it clear that you're not just shooting at folks in the hood, you shooting at peace officers. Officers who sworn to protect and serve the community, and you shooting at them. And you pled guilty to 3 counts of that. And then you were involved in felon in possession of a firearm and discharging of a firearm while committing a violent act and aggravated assault on a separate matter. And so he's bringing up all these charges and saying, man, how much time you got? And he's breaking everything down. And if you look at these charges and you look at the time, so wait a second. They gave you 10 years, but you only had to do 3. and they just hung the 7 years over your head. You were on probation for the rest. So Mr. Steele is bringing light to is, man, that was a sweet deal. And you had a motivation to tell those police officers whatever you needed to tell them to get the best deal you could get, because you were singing. And so Brian Steele, not only he's a convicted felon, but you can't even give credence to what he's saying because he has a motivation to what? Lie. And then that's not it. Then Brian Steele was saying, hold up. You remember sitting down with me? You remember, do you remember January 22nd, 2023, a Sunday morning, you sat down with myself and a detective. And we sat down at some place not too far from your home, Kroger grocery store. Right? And we sat down and I asked you, is it okay if I record your statements? You remember that? Mr. Bean is staying consistent with his I don't recall responses. I don't recall. Now you got to remember, it was easy to say I don't recall what happened in 2013. Now he's saying he don't recall what happened in 2023. Right? That was just a little over a year ago. He's saying this incident where he was at a grocery store not too far from where he lived, and he sat down with Mr. Steele and Mr. Steele's private investigator. He don't remember that. And so just as Adrian Love just had to finish and recall all these incidents about, you don't recall this, you don't recall telling the detective that about what Young Thug did and Young Thug got away from the car and you don't recall all that. Now Brian still got to ask him, man, you don't recall sitting down with me? You don't recall giving me a statement saying, man, all this was made up and the police officers, they were looking for Young Thug because he was the big name and he was the big target. You don't remember telling me all this? You don't remember saying, man, look, I made all that up. I knew they would record me in jail, and so I had to make it seem like what I was saying was true. So I told my wife that Young Thug was with me because I knew they would record me. You don't remember telling me this? This is what Steele is saying. And just like I inquired about Miss Love, I was like, wait, hold up. Mr. Steele's talking about a recorded statement that transpired on January 22nd, 2023. Ooh, where's that interview? Where's that recording? He's questioning him about it. He's trying to impeach him or first he's trying to refresh his memory. And if he lies or if it's not consistent with whatever that recording says, then he's going to impeach him. And then now you got Adrian Love objecting. Objection, Your Honor, facts not in evidence. Objection, Your Honor, there's no foundation for this. Objection, Your Honor, objection, Your Honor, objection, Your Honor, right? Because now it's like, hold up. At some point, Judge Glanville was saying, listen, Mr. Steele, did you give Adrian Love a copy of this recording? He said, yes, I gave it to her at 6 o'clock in the morning. Ooh, that mean that's fresh material. I mean, when Adrian Love woke up that morning, got out her bed, you know what I mean? Leaned over to check her phone. You know how it is. We wake up in the morning. We check that phone, what time it is. Maybe the alarm went off. We got the alarm on our phone. And sometimes we'll check a message here or two, right? And all of a sudden you got a bing. In that email it says recorded statement of Mr. Bean, January 22nd, 2023. Ooh, that probably woke her up. He said 6 o'clock. I don't know. I don't know if Miss Love a late sleep or maybe she was up already. You know what I mean? Big day. Every day a big day. I don't know. But that bing probably hit her. Now she got to sit up straight in her bed. Before she brush her teeth, man, she like, oh, love. Man, that be the worst ones when you getting evidence like last minute. But see, Brian Steele was brilliant in this because he could hold that close to the vest. He don't have to turn that information over unless there's some untruthful statements, right? And he want to impeach the witness. So I don't know to be certain, but I believe that the fact that he turned it over to her early that morning was because there were some inconsistent statements, and he said, now I gotta give it to her, right? I know she gonna object, so I gotta turn it over because I anticipated this question from Judge Glanville. Did you turn it over to Miss Love? And there he is. Yes, Your Honor, I turned it over at 6 o'clock in the morning. And so Miss Love is trying to shut it down, y'all, because this is major. We not talking about 2013. We talking about early 2023. Right? Something more fresh. One would think that this is more fresh on Mr. Bean's mind. He could think this wasn't too long ago. You sit up here and get on the stand and say you don't remember talking to Young Thug's lawyer. What? Really? Come on, man. You remember that conversation. And so Miss Love is objecting, and Judge Glanville was letting some stuff come in, but she's consistent. Miss Love is consistent in her objections. She knows foundation, not into evidence. No. Judge Glanville, rephrase your question. She jump up again. So she know she has a problem with this interview, y'all. And I'm on the edge of my seat because I'm like, I got to hear this interview. Because based on Mr. Steele's questions, he's like, listen, didn't you tell me and my detective that the police officers wanted you to give a version that was against Jeffrey Williams? They wanted to tie Jeffrey Williams into all this, and so you gave them what they wanted. Didn't you tell me that? Right? Young Thug was a big target, and so that's the only reason why you put Young Thug in there. Now, if he's saying that, that's wildly inconsistent what he allegedly said back in 2013. And so you got conflicting statements. And not only that, Brian Steele was saying, even back then, remember at the hospital, when you were sent to the hospital, your statements, you were saying you weren't driving a vehicle. Somebody else was driving a vehicle. It wasn't you. So even back then on 2013, your statements, what you said to the police officers were inconsistent with what you said when you were at the hospital. Because remember, Bean could have lost his life out there playing with them police. I mean, this guy got hit running after them, allegedly shooting. Somebody was shooting. I don't know if he was shooting. Somebody else in that car was shooting, but you better believe he could have lost his life that day. What? Peace officers? Man. So Brian Steele was like, let's talk about when you were at the hospital. So even your statements way back in 2013 that Adrian Love is alluding to, there's inconsistency. But then let's talk about when we sat down and met at the grocery store, man, right near your house, man. You said you didn't want to talk right outside your house, so you wanted to go to the grocery store. We went to the grocery store right near your house, and I'm with my detective. And I asked you, can we record this conversation? Listen, to all my lawyers, man, y'all up and coming, I need you to understand, whenever you sit down with a witness, let me tell you something. You better record that conversation. Have your detective right there with you and record that conversation. Of course, ask their permission, but you better make sure you record that conversation. Because let me tell you something. Whatever they tell you at the grocery store, outside and right in front of their house, maybe at the library, maybe at Starbucks, maybe right outside the church, wherever you had that little meeting with that witness that's critical to your case, and they telling you all kind of information, you better make sure you had that statement recorded, because let me tell you something. When they get in that courtroom, it's something about that witness stand. Ooh, yo, that witness stand changes folks, man. They get on there, they say one thing, get on that witness stand and tell a whole different story. You like, what happened? We just talked. How you gonna say that? We just talked. Bruh, what's going on? It changes, right? I don't remember. What are you talking about? Because it's a different dynamic. See, a lot of times when witnesses give statements, they're not thinking that one day they're going to have to take the stand. They're not thinking about that. That's why you got all these statements and it's making a big mess from Mr. Bean, because when he's initially saying all this, he never would have dreamed that he would have had to take the stand and regurgitate all this. And so now when he on the stand, I don't know. I'm just saying it's more convenient to say, I don't remember. And listen, I give some credence to what he's saying when he say I don't remember all this and the fact that I put it all behind me. I do. I really do. But as I stated, reasonable minds can agree and infer that, look, man, there's some stuff it's just ingrained in your memory. But you got to get that recording for moments like this, because they going to get on the stand and say something totally different. A couple of weeks ago, man, they had the alleged victim. We about to start trial. We about to pick a jury. They had the alleged victim in court, and I spoke to the alleged victim. See, the law allows us to speak to all the witnesses, even the victim. And I spoke to the alleged victim. They have a child together. My client was on trial for 4 counts of drive-by shooting and domestic abuse, aggravated assault, all that. And thankfully, we walked out of there with a not guilty. 8 counts. My client walked out of there not guilty. 2-day trial. But the day before we picked the jury, I spoke to the alleged victim, and she told me out of her mouth, she said, man, your client had nothing to do with this. I know he didn't do this. I assumed he did it because the person who did it drove by in his vehicle. Turns out it allegedly was his girlfriend. Allegedly. Because that matter's still pending. But she got on the stand, despite her speaking to me the day before, she got on the stand and pointed to my client and said, yeah, he shot at me. I'm looking at my client. I'm like, wait, what? Wait, did you hear that? Yo, wait. But see, I've been doing this long enough to know that, look, I'm already ready. I got questions if you go left. I got questions if you go right. So I ain't tripping. But I was like, wow, you just told me that it wasn't my guy. And if I felt that way, how you think my client was feeling? Man, I could feel all I felt from him. I heard a big group. You know that nervous group? That's what I heard from my client. Nervous. I mean, I'm mad because he really wasn't there. Eventually, this witness cleaned up her testimony and said on the stand while she was on direct, yeah, he couldn't have done that. I know he didn't do that. I just assumed that he did it because I saw his car. And then, of course, I got up and I made sure that was clear for the jury. But back to this case, y'all. I mean, something about that witness stand, people get up there and anything goes. That's why when I'm in opening statements, we talk about what we think the evidence is going to show, what we think the evidence is going to prove. But we really don't know. We don't know what folks going to get on that stand and say and do. We really do not know. This thing live, man. I can't think of a more real reality show other than a trial and maybe sports. Say what you want, because you do not know what's going to happen. That's why we got to have our statements in our back pocket, transcripts, recordings, all that, because the moment you try to say something inconsistent, what you said before, I got to impeach you on that. Young lawyers on the come up, man. You got to be ready. You got to hold that close to your vest. That's why Brian Steele, he had to give that 6 o'clock in the morning because he held that close to his vest. Oh, you won't get on the stand and say all that? Could you imagine Brian Steele salivating? Okay. He got to pull it out because Adrian Love, again, she's throwing it out there. So Ms. Love is objecting from the highest mountain. I mean, she is objection, all the way to the point where the judge was like, y'all need to approach. And they approach and they have a sidebar. That sidebar took forever. I'm telling y'all, we on cruise control, y'all. Like, get comfortable. We ain't going nowhere. Forgive my double negative, but it just resonates more. We ain't going nowhere. Like this thing, get comfortable. Everybody trying to project, it's going to take several months. It's going to take this. It's going to take, Brian Steele said, man, we going to roll into the Super Bowl 2025. Folks going to be partying in my city in New Orleans. That trial still going to be going on. Slow motion, y'all. We driving with Miss Daisy out here. Take your time, man. This thing on cruise control. I told you, I'm going to check back in. But I ain't covering this thing gavel to gavel. But anyway, they went to the bench, and it took him a while. And then when he gets back to the stand, he talking about something else. So that meant, that objection was sustained. But I'm like, oh, man, that's what we wanted to know. So I don't know what happened. I think it's probably a foundational issue because Adrian Love did make a whole lot of noise of facts not in evidence and a foundation issue. Judge Glanville initially gave Steele some rope to question Bean about it, but then he shut it down. And towards the end, when the jury were done for the day, Judge Glanville was like, listen, I need everybody to verify all these outside statements. Right? Did it happen? Did it occur? What you're relying on? The judge even went as far as saying, listen, Brian Steele, I know you wouldn't do this. I know you wouldn't question somebody about something that you know is untrue, but I need everybody to just verify these statements and interviews. And so it looks like Ms. Love's objection was sustained as it relates to the interview involving Brian Steele and Mr. Bean at the grocery store on January 22nd, 2023. Right? But I know Brian Steele coming back to it. And also this interview that happened supposedly at the hospital. The judge was like, y'all need to look into that too. Before we question about that, we need to make sure it's true. Look into all that. So I believe we coming back to that. And we left off at Mr. Bean's statements. So this thing heating up because let me tell you something. If we got a recorded statement that Mr. Bean told Brian Steele, look, man, the police made me say Young Thug was in that car. The police were after Young Thug, and they wanted me to mention Young Thug, and so that's why I put Young Thug in that car. I made that up. It was all a lie. Young Thug ain't had nothing to do with this. I was acting on my own. I wasn't acting on the part of YSL, right? Because that's what Brian Steele was asking him. You did that all on your own, which supports you got convicted all on your own. And Young Thug did not get charged, did not get convicted. His name is not on the indictment. His name is not on the plea deal. He ain't had nothing to do with this. So this is consistent with Brian Steele's theory that y'all going after somebody that ain't had nothing to do with this. This man making music, right? Got fans all over the world, winning Grammys, Elton John, Rihanna, all this on his records, and y'all sitting up here trying to bring them in this mess that folks already pled guilty to. Where they do that at? We still talking about freedom of speech. We still talking about freedom of expression. Yeah, you may not like it. You may not like how he made his tens of millions of dollars, but remember, he made it out the gutter, y'all. The environment he was in, man. What makes y'all think all this was true? They trying to tie him into this. We showing y'all 3 defendants. Walter Murphy. Walter Murphy was on the initial indictment. Walter Murphy is alleged to be a co-founder of YSL. Walter Murphy wound up pleading guilty to his involvement as a result of the allegations on the indictment. Leading up to the trial, Walter Murphy said, man, I'm out of here, man. Let me take my plea deal and go home. Walter Murphy got 10 years, suspend 9, and credit for time served for the 1 year he did. He was out. I'm out of here, cuz. But they said, wait. Hold up. Just know that we may need your testimony surrounding the incidents as it relates to this indictment. So be looking to hear from Walter Murphy, and don't be surprised if my man said, I don't remember, as Adrian Love indicated in our opening statements. Remember Gunner? This thing was leading up to trial. Gunner slid on out of there too. He took his lick. Let me get my deal, and I'm out of here, man. I ain't trying to go do some time for this. I'm out here making money. I'm hot right now. Gunner hot. He got up out of there, and then I read something where he gave a statement. I'm not being involved. I don't know anything about this. I'm not cooperating. So that's going to be interesting. So y'all, they left off at Mr. Bean is still on the stand. Brian Steele was still cross-examining Mr. Bean. So Mr. Bean is still under cross. And I'm interested in the statement that Mr. Bean gave to Mr. Steele and his private investigator. I'm really eager to see how that's going to play out, y'all. So I don't know, y'all. This is very interesting. Mr. Bean, as a witness, his testimony is very interesting. Obviously, it's crucial to at least this aspect of the case surrounding this act. This incident is important for the state because, again, like I said earlier, they get to tie Young Thug in it, right? Now you can't say Young Thug over there making music and he don't even know all these people. They may have tattoos of YSL and they may be posting YSL online, but Young Thug don't know these people. Not on this incident. Not on September 11, 2013. No, he all in the car. Young Thug all in the car. He all part of this. All this happened at his behest. Remember what Mr. Bean said? Young Thug wanted to hit Dotson for the lip. Young Thug said, yeah, he got $20,000 to $30,000 on him. Just walking around like that? Miss Love, I don't know. I don't know, Miss Love. I think you're going to have to come with more than that, but be that as it may. Y'all, listen, I'm going to wrap this one up, man. I appreciate your time. Thank you for tuning in. Very interesting case, y'all. I thought about, now there's a recent development about this case that happened. It came down from the Georgia Supreme Court. A gentleman by the name of Morgan Baker. Morgan Baker was convicted for murder, was sentenced to life, but his case was overturned after going to the Georgia Supreme Court. And what was critical in that particular case, a music video was introduced by the state where Morgan Baker was in the music video and he was holding a firearm, right? He was holding a purported firearm because we don't even know if it was actually a gun. And so that case went all the way up to the highest court in Georgia and they overturned the entire conviction. Man, that got to be a heck of a feeling, man, to know it's overturned. Now, it doesn't mean the case is thrown out, but what's interesting about that case is if the Supreme Court saying that video shouldn't have never came in because it's highly prejudicial to Mr. Morgan, then now you got Mr. Steele saying, hold up, Judge Glanville. Remember, I've been saying this from day one. We need to look at this case. Breaking news. Remember Kermit the Frog on Muppet Babies? Breaking news. Georgia Supreme Court came down, overturned somebody's verdict because the state introduced a music video into evidence. The jury relied on that as evidence to convict Mr. Morgan. Breaking news. I told you, Judge Glanville. So listen, I want to unpack that. I don't want to rush it. Y'all see me getting riled up already. I want to just unpack that and give that its due time. Be looking for that new video sometime soon. Y'all, I appreciate y'all time. Keep supporting me. Keep telling folks about me. Subscribe, like, share, all that good stuff. Download the podcast. Look me up on Instagram. It's my full name at Kenneth M. Willis. I appreciate y'all time. I'm out. Later.
Call your first witness. I got Kenneth Willis. He bought his business, he gon' take it the distance. Listen, he giving gaming, believing high level represent. Call your first witness. Yeah, call your first witness.
Griff has been paid for this endorsement.